One word, Trump supporters. Suckers! David French with a hugely Schadenfreudeistic I told you so, nationalreview.com on Wednesday. Yes, that's right, folks. Trump is already ditching his so-called movement, and his supporters are quickly discovering that he fights only in his own self-interest, and they're just fine with that because that's just what brainwashed, mind-numbed drone cultists do. And we are 1 month from Inauguration Day. Well, 3 days short of 1 month. 4 weeks. 4 weeks from today is Inauguration Day. And it looks like the Donald Trump revolution is already over. Told you so. In his place is a globalist establishment led by a rogue tweeter. Doubt me? Let's review the great causes that motivated his base. See, I'll give you a little aside here. It was always going to be that way. You know why? Because there are far more so-called globalists than there are Trumplicans. That's just, if you're gonna, you gotta staff your regime with somebody, and you're gonna have to rely on the so-called establishment, which is you're on the same side as the establishment Trumplicans. I hope you realize that. You can't, the days when you could pretend to stand outside the establishment, well, those days are over, pal. Guys and gals, those days are over. You Trump supporters are the establishment. How does it feel? You haven't changed a damn thing. That's the point here. Since winning the White House, Trump has not burned it down. Instead, he's built it up. Trump's anti-establishment candidacy has put the establishment in charge. Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell remain at the helms of the House and Senate. McConnell, the ultimate insider, may now be the most powerful Senate Majority Leader in decades thanks to Harry Reid's weakening of the filibuster, which McConnell restored. So that doesn't sound as stark as you may think it does at first glance. Trump's core wanted to destroy both men. Instead, they ruled their chambers and looked primed to pass their own agendas through Congress. Beyond Capitol Hill, Trump has stocked his staff and his cabinet with establishment fixtures and billionaires, or fat cats in populist speak. His chief of staff is Reince Priebus, the former head of the RNC. His cabinet nominees include long-serving generals, the longest-serving governor in the history of Texas, the CEO of ExxonMobil, and a former Goldman Sachs partner. Sure, he still has a sprinkling of insurgents in the ranks, although they don't hold any positions of real power, you see. But his early supporters, the cuckiest of the cucks, insiders and outsiders clothing, such as Newt Gingrich, Rick Santorum, Mike Huckles Huckabee, Rudolph Rudy Giuliani, and Chris Christie, it's the big show, are notable mainly for their absence. Not one has earned yet a significant place by his side. They hitched a ride on the Trump train.
Come on! Nice and easy! Don't look down! That's it! You're doing fine!
Thought I forgot about that or had retired that, didn't you? Oh, it's got a lot more mileage to get out of it before this is all said and done, folks. Yeah, they jumped aboard, hitched a ride, and were ushered off, or rather thrown off, before the last stop. If Trump didn't burn it down, he sure didn't drain the swamp either. In fact, just the other day, Newt Gingrich, interviewed by National Public Radio, said, I'm told he just disclaims that. He now says it was cute, but he doesn't want to use it anymore. Well, how could he? I mean, never mind the fact that Trump got on Twitter and said, no, I'm still using that phrase, drain the swamp, even though he's not doing it. And Newt said, oh, I'm sorry, don't disappear me. Ah! In fact, Newt literally, word for word, verbatim said, my leader says he's going to continue to use that term, so I'm going to use it too. That didn't come across audibly for the podcast, but you can use your imagination. And how could Trump drain the swamp, so to speak? Government by Goldman Sachs and ExxonMobil is government by the swamp, of the swamp, and for the swamp. This isn't a revolution. It's a thoroughly conventional changing of the guard. Well, I wouldn't go that far. Because look who's at the head of the processional. But still, I mean, Trump supporters ought to be the angriest, most enraged people in the country because their dear leader has screwed them and tossed them aside like, well, every model that Trump ever brought into his modeling agency in the hopes that maybe they would be like Melania and he'd marry one of them, but no such luck, suckers. The list just goes on and on and on. Lock her up! Nope. Trump already announced that he wouldn't pursue charges against Hillary Clinton, and 2 weeks ago, at one of his thank you idolatrous Nuremberg-esque rallies in Michigan, he interrupted the crowd's chant of lock her up with, that plays great before the election. Now we don't care, right? Really. At another one of these things, he actually said, I know that you were some of the most vicious and violent people in the United States of America, but now we don't need to do that anymore, right? It served its purpose. We won, right? I mean, Trump supporters, you've got to understand this. Donald Trump has utter sneering contempt for you. He did what no other liberal has ever been able to do. He infiltrated the Republican Party, took it over, used it to get to power, and now he's going to govern as a liberal Democrat. You people are such, well, sucker. I can guarantee you the people who put Hillary for prison signs in their front yards cared. But Trump never did. Go ahead. You know, it's almost as if Trump said what he needed to say to win the election without regard for the truth or the consequences. Oh, imagine that. Indeed, he even seemed to impute his own motives to his crowd, his cult. At a rally last week, he said, and I quote, I just made reference to this mere moments ago, "You people were vicious, violent, and screaming. Where's the wall? Where? We want the wall! Screaming, prison, prison! Lock her up! I mean, you were going crazy. I mean, you were nasty and mean and vicious, and you wanted to win, right?" But now, in Trump's words, his own words, "You're mellow and you're cool and you're not nearly as vicious or violent, right? Because we won, right?" He has such sneering contempt for you, and you seem to be just fine with that. It's like battered wife syndrome, or Stockholm syndrome, as the case may be. You see, for Trump, it was all tactics. And he appears to think it was just tactics for his supporters as well. He has such contempt for you people, you Trump supporters. He insults your intelligence, in which there's not much intelligence to insult, I will grant you that. He calls you names. He describes you openly as everything that the left, the Marxian left, calls you. And you're just fine with that. He thinks you are what the Marxian left calls you. And you're just fine with that. You don't have any problem with it. Perhaps nothing sums up Trump's insincerity more than his Secretary of State pick. To the extent that there was any cornerstone to Trump's thoughts on foreign policy, it was, well, he has a very left-wing foreign policy. He had visceral disgust at George W. Bush and Bush-era interventionism. That was globalist. That was nation-building. He even went so far as to echo far-left talking points and propaganda and claim that Bush lied us into the Iraq War. But in nominating the CEO of one of the world's largest multinational corporations, Trump has nominated the very definition of a globalist. And just as Rex Tillerson has come under fire for his close ties to Vladimir Putin, Putin, the people who have rallied most strongly to his side are members of the Bush foreign policy team. Foremost among them, Condoleezza Rice, Dick Cheney, Don Rumsfeld, and Bush himself, neocons! Who on a private phone call last week lobbied Bob Corker on, the king of failure theater, and the man who handed Barack Obama everything he needed in order to hand nuclear weapons to the Iranian oligarchy on Tillerson's behalf. Well, where are you, all you sneering anti-globalists now? I tell you where you are. You're on your knees. Okay, I'll just do it. To your hay-haired messiah. Your false-haired false messiah. How about that? For those not on the Trump train,
Come on! Nice and easy! Don't look down! That's it! You're doing fine!
These moves are kinda sorta reassuring. Some of his cabinet picks, such as General James Mattis at the Trumpagon, are inspired. Others are simply solid. Most seem poised to implement the better parts of the GOP agenda, whatever that now is, and to dismantle the worst of Obama's excesses, allegedly. Trump's foreign policy, however, is still the wild card, and he has done, well, it's not much of a wild card. It's pretty much Obama's foreign policy. Not much is going to change on that front. And he has done nothing at all to show Americans that he has a proper understanding of the metastasizing Russian threat to America's vital strategic interests. You see, Trump's movement was always about Trump. And those who marched to the polls believing that he'd fight, fight, fight for them should now know that the only fights he picks are those it's in his self-interest to pick. Yes, he still might try to build the wall. Oh, he won't try to. He won't. There's not going to be any wall, folks. I'm sorry to break it to you. It ain't going to happen. And it wouldn't be a good idea anyway. Remember the Maginot Wall? Remember how that effective that was? How long ago was that? 75 years? 76 years ago? And will his first Supreme Court nominee be solid? No, I don't have any confidence in that, and neither should you. You can also count on him to blur the lines between his business and his regime. In other words, scandals galore, because money is in his self-interest. Remember, he's rich, allegedly. And he'll likely keep tweeting like a Breitbart, which is to say neo-Nazi blogger, because that has served his political interests beautifully, at least so far. You know, it's as if the people stormed the Bastille and set up the guillotines, only to find their leader feasting with King Louis. Turns out he was a member of the ancient regime after all.